Bengals versus Browns. Let's go through the top players of both teams and select our fantasy ballers. This is for Week 1's Showdown Captain mode. Let's get started. The Bengals confirmed that Joe Burrow will be playing against the Browns tomorrow. This is really good news. That means your fantasy strategy changes a little bit. Your wide receivers has more opportunity, especially since Burrow and Chase have a really good connection. Burrow and Chase are the most expensive on the Bengals, and it's definitely for a good reason. Now, if you look at his target stats last year, he is one of the top targets, meaning he gets thrown the ball, he actually catches the ball, and he gets really good points. The lowest that he've scored in last year was about 10 points, and the highest he've scored is up to 35. So you're looking at pretty good value here, especially since he is a potential star explosive player. On the other hand, you have Joe Burrow, who is known to be pretty good at throwing the ball to his team, and he has a set of wide receivers that is a core set. That is Chase, we have Higgins, and also Boyd, and then he also has some new tight ends on the play, so you're expected to see if he doesn't throw to Chase, he's still able to throw it to his other players and still score really high. If you look at his stats last year, he averaged from about 20 points per game, and the lowest that he has done was 12 points. The highest that he usually gets is around almost 30 points, so that is really good considering all facts there. Now you can go either Chase or Burrow, but I would recommend going both. So those are our top players in terms of QB and wide receiver 1. Other wide receivers that I would look at is, of course, Higgins. He is a top player for Burrow. If you look at his stats, it's really similar to Chase. Now, it just depends on the day who gets blocked more. He does get less targets compared to Chase. Chase is just like really fast out there, but he does have really high volume. Now, Boyd is a top third option that you can look at as well. If you look at his targets, it is less than the other two, but he is potential. So when he does catch a touchdown, you get really higher points. Now, for the past couple of years, the tight end on the Bengals do get utilized. Last year, they had Hurst on the team, but they have since replaced him with Irv Smith Jr. He was on the Minnesota Vikings last year, and he was outshined by Hockenson, but he's still a decent player. The only concern that I have here is, does he have that connection with Joe Burrow? And Joe Burrow did miss some practice time. If your budget is really tight, I would consider adding the other wide receiver. Irvin is somebody who has been on the team for quite a while now. They have the established report, and when he does catch a touchdown, especially you saw in week 16, he caught 2, it went up to 19. And of course, that all things considered is if his teammates are not around, but if the play works, he does get some ball, and for 600, it might help you fit all the top guys on both teams. As for the kicker, McPherson is quite reliable. He averaged around 7-8 points per game. And if you look at the game log, depending on the narrative of the game itself, he can score from 4 all the way to 11 and even more, right? So if the team is expected to do a little bit better or they're doing more kicks, McPherson is your guy. Last year, the Bengals was able to score 7 points against the Browns. The defensive team averaged around 6 to 8 points. It ultimately depends on the game script because sometimes they can go all the way up to 20 points, right? Depending on the team they play against, depending on the captain. If they're able to get those picks or you're able to get those sacks, those drops, then you can expect a really good score. At $6,000 for captain, it is a little bit more expensive than the other guys. Moving on to the Browns, their defensive team is around 6 points on average, but you know what? It is pretty close to the Bengals, all things considered. They are playing at home, as both of them are playing in Ohio, but if you're looking at it, they can range really high score. They got 30 points against Houston last year. Of course, this is not Joe Burrow's team, so that's something that you do have to consider. Be aware that the first kicker here is actually on the practice squad, so Hopkins is their main guy. Hopkins is a pretty good kicker. He's reliable. He can get decent points. I would consider drafting Hopkins, especially if the Browns are expected to score more field goals. Now this year, I do think the offensive team has a better opportunity, so I probably would stay away from Hopkins for the time being. Now, Watson was one of those quarterbacks that did get some action in the preseason. That means he got some practice just to see how it all goes. He does have a good wide receiver team this year, considering they brought in Elijah Moore. If we're looking at the top wide receiver, we're going to have to look at Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's been here. This is his second or third year now, and he's doing pretty good. Now, if you look at the targets, he gets really good numbers. The same numbers that you might get on average as the highest peak, the same as Chase, especially on the Browns. Amari Cooper is stated to be more of the deep ball guy, so if no one's blocking him down there, he is expected to get those long targets. For short passes, we have Elijah Moore from the Jets last year. Now, Elijah is somebody who is quite reliable given that if they give him the ball, and that was something that he did complain last year to his team. You know, all things considered, he is a really good player, and during the preseason, he got a lot of short balls, meaning that he's someone who's reliable and he could get open. Now, I would keep People Jones on the same tier as Tyler Boyd, meaning if the other two are not producing, he is expected to. A rookie that I might look out for is Tillman. You know, he was playing in the preseason, so there is some possibility that he might get some targets, especially if everybody else cannot get free. One of my favorite tight ends for fantasy football is David Njoku. He does get the ball, he does get the targets, and he makes things happen. Now, I'm quite aware that if they have a better wide receiving team this year, then he might not get as many targets. And now I miss the running back on the Cincinnati Bengals and I miss the running back on this team, but it's really easy to decide. You have Joe Mixon, who's been known to be the top running back there, and you have Nick Chubb, who is the top running back for Cleveland Brown. If you look at his stats last year, you know, the Bengals allowed him to score 28 points that game. The following game, he was only able to score 8 points, but you can see that he has the potential to get there. Let's select our fantasy heroes, our breakout ballers, and potential questionable stars. Fantasy hero of this game has definitely got to be Jamar Chase, and then Nick Chubb, and then Amari Cooper. The breakout ballers of this game is going to be Njoku and Joe Mixon, and that's because if Burrow just got back, you know, they might consider giving Joe Mixon more of the ball, doing more runs rather than throws. I also want to add T. Higgins into this, especially since he's renewing his contract. That means he want to do well, show that he does well. He will play regardless if they come to the decision before the game, but that is something that we might want to consider here. The questionable stars for this game has definitely got to be the defensive teams. Now that's because it can go either way. One team can outscore the other, and then if you choose the wrong team, your entire lineup is going to be messed up. For the captain spot, we're definitely going to choose one of the fantasy heroes, those guys who has the most potential to score big. We're going to go ahead and go with Nick Chubb as the captain and go with Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon. In this narrative, I'm going to say that T. Higgins will get the ball. Because my lineup is run heavy, I'm going to go with more wide receivers. We're going to put Elijah Moore, and to close it up, we only have room for one more under 1,000, and that's going to be Irwin. Breaking down this lineup, we have Nick Chubb and Joe Burrow, who are expected to be fantasy heroes. We have Joe Mixon as a safe bet, and then we have Higgins and Moore as your breakout ballers, people who have the potential to score the ball. Definitely let me know who is your captain for this game. Thanks for watching.